I had heart surgery in 2021. And prior to that, for many years, I just did not have the bandwidth to read, but I didn't understand why. And then once I had open heart surgery, all of a sudden I could read. Yeah, it was crazy. And I have spoken to a bunch of heart patients who have reported the same phenomenon. And so I'm one of those, the types of books I choose. So now I've been able to read with more ease. But I'm one of those who I choose like juicy nonfiction. And it seems to, when I say juicy, I mean like Braiding Sweetgrass, one of my most favorite books of all time. And right now I'm reading the Book of Joy. And I will read one page at a time, and then I need to think about it for a few days. So it kind of drags on longer than it really needs to. But and I'm writing a book, and so it's like, this girl can only take in but so many words.
I totally get that. Now, that is
Mhm,
actually fascinating. I've never heard of this.
mhm,
Open
mhm.
heart surgery, you're saying that when people recover on the other end, they have an easier time of reading books or just
Now, I don't know if that's true for everyone, and I don't remember. I host a podcast on open heart surgery, and I don't ask every single patient I have on. Although I should start like doing an actual scientific poll, um, but I've had a few patients who have said to me that like all of a sudden they could think again. I mean, because like for me, my heart wasn't getting enough oxygen, so of course it was affecting my brain. I just didn't realize it until after the surgery, and then all of a sudden I was like up 20 IQ points. It felt like it's, it's so crazy, like such a crazy experience. So, um, yeah, I think the beauty of a book is it just opens your soul up to different ways of thinking, and it's such a unique way of interacting with knowledge, and that it's like an old friend. I know where that book that I'm reading right now is. And I can pick it up when I have the bandwidth to take in, new information or a new way of seeing the world.
absolutely. That's really fascinating. I was just thinking of, I know nothing about open heart surgery, but I always sense or feel like the center of the self is in the heart.
Mhm.
Like who we are, how we interact with the world, how we receive the world, how we understand our place, our sense of self is in the heart. And
Yeah.
so when you have, I mean, it's interesting those words, right? Open heart surgery. It's like it opens your heart up to new experience or maybe new possibility or new ways of being. And while I'm sure open heart surgery is nothing to sneeze at. It's probably terrifying and alarming, and I would be so scared if I had to go through it. But it's interesting on the other side that people change or shift their way of being in the world.
Mhm.
It's very
Oh yeah.
powerful.
Mhm. Yeah, and the only way that I was prepared for that was, I remember my surgeon and his physician assistant both like sat down with me the day before. I'd already checked into the hospital, and they were like, this is going to be intense, and you may have something called cardiac depression afterwards. But that's all that they said. And what I was not prepared for was the complete and total realignment of my soul. And I was not prepared for um, the inexplicable peace that I had never had before. The surgeon actually had to handle my heart, and he had to cut into my heart muscle, and that and the heart was shifted around a little bit because he had to like get to the back of the heart, and my heart was stopped for an hour and a half. And so all of that, just it really is interesting how it shifts the soul. And a very intuitive dear friend of mine came to take care of me just to kind of give my husband a break that first week once we were home. And she still talks about how I like my soul had, she said, I just was like this soulless human being walking around the house. It was obvious I had just been through such an epic experience and that my soul had not fully integrated back into my body. I was just super disassociated. Um, but I mean, that's since I've since reintegrated and I've processed the trauma and done all the work. But that's one of the reasons why I started my podcast, was because I felt so underprepared for the spiritual, soulful aspects of surgery and mental. I mean, even though they said you might get a little sad, um, that was just the tip of the iceberg.
It's very interesting. Are you familiar with any sort of ideas from Oriental medicine, acupuncture, that
Oh
kind of stuff
yeah, yeah,
around the
yeah. I
heart?
did. Oh yeah, I did a whole episode on it, and I go to acupuncture every week.
I just think it is. I mean, I learned some things that are absolutely fascinating to me. One, that the heart, well, the pericardium is called the emperor's guard. And so
Ooh, I
it
haven't heard
guards,
that.
yeah, and so it is around the heart. It guards the heart, who's the emperor. And an acupuncturist was explaining to me once that when we have terrifying events or traumatic events happen to us from childhood or when we're an adult or whenever, um, when it happens, that story's imprinted on our blood, the blood
Mhm,
that's coursing through our body. And so the blood goes through, right, your lungs, your heart, like everything. And the pericardium's job, in essence, is to kind of filter, and the lungs as well, the kidneys filter and store some of those stories, some of those traumas to keep them from reaching the heart. And because the heart can only take so much as far as holding all of that stuff.
mhm.
I mean, and that's why you have the pericardium. That's why you have all these other organs. But I had I'm going to tell you something totally crazy. So I was in Portland and I'd never had an anxiety attack before in my life. All of a sudden, I was sitting on the couch and I felt this feeling in my heart that was so intense and crazy. I thought I was starting to have a heart attack. It was so terrifying. And then I just had this intense feeling of black tar oozing out of, I could feel it viscerally from my heart. And I could feel it go into my chest wall. And then I could feel it slowly going up to my shoulders. And then it went very slowly down my arms. And it was so palpable that I looked at my fingertips expecting that I'd see this come out. And then I had my first full-blown anxiety attack, which I had never had that before, so I had no reference. My neighbor thought I was having a heart attack, took me to the doctor. They did all these things. They're like, "No, no, you're just having an anxiety attack." And I thought, "What?" But upon like learning a lot of stuff later and doing a lot of study, I realized that it was that day that my heart said, "Okay, done. I
Mhm.
can't hold anymore. I
Wow.
am done. And I'm just gonna, this is it, purge, get rid of it. It's gonna come out, and you're gonna have to figure out how to process it and deal with it because I can't anymore." And it was a real call to arms for me, which sounds really violent, but after a few years of unpacking it and trying to figure out what exactly had happened to me, that our heart is kind of our best friend, and you can have a relationship with it and talk to it and become friends with it. And gosh, it works so hard for each of us, holding our traumas, holding our stories, holding the ideas of who we are and our place in the world. But at some point, the heart is like, "Okay, I no more heavy lifting. I'm done." You have to get rid of some of this stuff. Therapy, yoga, whatever it's going to take. Crying for days. Get it out. But that it was such a powerful experience and really changed my life because it was then that I understood that, my heart has its own intelligence, just like my gut does. But the heart's in there and it's trying its hardest and but it is our best friend. And it gives me incredible advice. It's helped with my intuition. It is literally my best friend. And I'm sure maybe you feel the same way, maybe you don't.
I feel like I'm gonna play that on loop for myself because I really needed to hear that today.